Hi, Dave.
Hi, I have a new shirt.
Do you?
No,
I don't. We were matching today. It's
okay,
kind of cute.
it is
Well,
beautiful.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, it was.
I
It
mean,
was great.
I've already said Merry Christmas to you.
I know, so you can't say anymore.
No.
It was great. Christmas was great.
Yeah, it wasn't
Church was
actually.
great.
We haven't done our Christmas yet.
Nope.
Our Johnson
Yeah, we
family,
like to stretch it out.
you know,
Hmm.
it's a it's part of the brand.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
My one Christmas vacation experiment today. We're going to find out if the noise can come through the ceiling into my headphones. We'll see how loud it gets.
Kids are upstairs.
There's like 6 people upstairs. I shut them
Cool,
out.
cool.
I think I'm just
Good.
going to tell them every day that we're recording and shut the door.
Boom.
They leave me alone. Okay.
You
Well,
know what they say about lying? It's an abomination to God and a very present help in time of trouble.
I
I
it
think we
might
should start
it
this
might
over.
no.
Okay.
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 Christmas is over. It's come and gone, but there's something left over. I think, well, there's a lot still in the story that we could continue to unpack. But there's something left over for you that you have been wanting to touch on. So we're going to do that today. This person, their story is still very much a part of Advent and the things that we've been talking about, the themes of Advent. Um, One of the themes that it fits into is while we've been looking for something big, like Lord, rend the heavens and come down. I know that's
Hmm.
what I want right now.
Hmm.
Um, but instead, God sends something small, something little, like a baby. And he uses ordinary people like Mary and Joseph and many others.
And then God
And
became
yeah,
ordinary.
and then God becomes ordinary,
Hmm.
which doesn't sound super fantastical, you know? But there's this woman left, Elizabeth, and she fits all these archetypal, that word that you use, all these archetypal categories. Mary goes to Elizabeth. Elizabeth sees Mary, and what she sees, she names. So you're going to start talking about this word archetypal and what you mean by that. But let's jump right into Elizabeth, Advent, and this archetypal story and what it might mean for us
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I love this story. And we started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and we were trying to put together the Advent flow and which talks
Right.
we're going to use and not use. And I just couldn't let go of this one because of this. She does fit Advent, and it would fit in there really well. But there is something bigger about her story. I do talk about archetypal truth a lot. It's kind of this truth that's symbolic, or it stands for something that is always true, and we lose that. I talk a lot about father energy.
Yeah.
The scriptures talk about the blessing of the father. You think of Abraham blessing the sons, and then Jacob blessing his sons, and Joseph. And there's a big deal about the father-son thing. I've done a
Yeah.
lot of reading on that kind of thing in the life of Jesus. The blessing of the father at his baptism. There's all sorts of archetypal truth about that. And I've done a lot of teaching on that, particularly to men, about a father wound, even their own need to be a dad, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But I've always struggled with a feminine version of that because I know there is one. And it's such a powerful archetype for the lack of healthy fathers. We got stuff in the culture that explains everything. But there's a feminine version of that. And well, here it is. It's that's why I can't let it go. Elizabeth, in my mind, is this feminine version of this thing, this archetypal truth I've talked about that was kind of limited to the father blessing the son, even God the Father blessing Jesus the Son, and there's so many things about that because God was blessing the Son before he had earned it, before he had done anything to deserve it, and in the strength of the Father's blessing, he goes into his life and his ministry. It's an amazing strengthening thing. Elizabeth, I think, is the feminine version of that. But let's kind of get into the story, and we'll kind of see that thing unfold as I remind you of it. And this is where it's Christmassy again. We're at the place in the story where the angel has just announced to Mary some amazing things. Mary, you have found favor with God. She's 14, 15 years old, just a kid. You're going to give birth to a son. His name, he will be great. He will be the son of the Most High God. His kingdom will reign forever and ever and ever. And her first reaction to that is less than thrilled. What the text says in chapter 1, Luke 1, verse 29, is she is first of all perplexed and actually quite shaken with all sorts of questions like, how can this be? What does this mean? What will this cost? What do I do? And when you're in a place, now think about a pivotal place in your life where something extraordinary is happening on the inside of you, and let's say it's a God thing, but you don't fully understand it. What do you want to do, or who do you want to go to when you have lots of questions like that? Who do you call? You call Vicki Degner, as we talked about the other day. Seriously, you call someone who knows these things, who you know has been through some of these things. And it is a fascinating thing in story. Verse 39, she has just heard from the angel. She's perplexed. First thing she does, it says, Mary arose and went in a hurry, meaning she ran straight to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I'll get into this a little bit later, is not her mother, which doesn't make her mother a bad person, but it's her cousin actually. And she's a much older woman than Mary. So she's like an older aunt maybe, or something like that. She's the wife of Zacharias, Mary's cousin, much older, but who herself is conceiving a child. She is about to give birth to John the Baptist. Interesting thing here, her birth, she had been barren. So she's an older woman, past childbearing age, and she's about to give birth to something that in her was born of God.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, to say the metaphor there is still a supernatural work of God inside of her. And because of who she was one of those people who Mary instinctively knew would know. That's why I mentioned Vicki Denger, and I hope Vicki's listening to this because it'll bless her. And anybody who here who's listening who knows Vicki Denger knows what I mean.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons Mary instinctively know that Elizabeth would know is in the text, because it says in verse 41 that Mary was full of the Holy Spirit. Now that's one of those verses you see in the Bible and you go, whatever that means, she spoke in tongues and, I don't know. It doesn't mean that. It means she was full of the life of God. She was full of breath. She was full of God. She was full of the Spirit of God. She was one of those full of God people. And the thing that God was birthing in her was of God as well. So Mary runs to her. And from this place of knowing, and I'm talking about Elizabeth now, and the reason she knows is because she's full of the life of God. She's able to give Mary something that other people who wouldn't be full of that life wouldn't be able to give. She doesn't give Mary a pep talk. She's not giving her a good word of encouragement. There's some things she knows because she knows. And so she says, in effect, she's able to say to Mary, to this young girl who's scared to death about this thing that God's doing in her, wondering if it's even a good thing, because Elizabeth knows, full of the life of God, she's able to say to Mary, don't wonder anymore, Mary, if this is a good thing or a God thing. Blessed are you. Don't wonder anymore about that. Blessed are you, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. Okay, but blessed is the fruit, what's going to come from this thing that God has planted in you that's scaring you. And blessed are you, Mary, for believing these things and for receiving these things. Even though you don't understand these things, here's an older woman, Vicki Degner, Elizabeth, full of the life of God, spots the life of God in someone else. And that blessing from someone further along the journey, older, who knew some things about the life of God, not just about life, but about the life of God coming alive in her, or not just literally, well, it was literally, but also metaphorically, because she was literally pregnant. Again, past childbearing, the life of God was growing in her in a very literal way. It would be John the Baptist. So she knew a little something about all of that growing in her. And what we really need to get, I think, about the picture is in verse 41. There's this weird verse that, you know, gets read every Christmas usually. that when Mary comes to see Elizabeth, Elizabeth is pregnant with John, and John in her leaps when right, remember that story?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Leaps in her womb. And what I think that is that's so, you know, that's like one of those things we go, that was so cool. But I think we've experienced that more than we know. Because what I think it is that the born of God life that was in Elizabeth was recognizing the born of God life in Mary. Try to dial into that even. The life of God in Elizabeth. It wasn't just Elizabeth, but something that had been born in the life of Elizabeth was recognizing the life of God in Mary. And when Elizabeth saw it, when she recognized it, she said it. That's a big thing too. And what she said was, don't wonder anymore, Mary. I know you're scared. Don't wonder anymore if this is good or God. Blessed are you, Mary, and blessed is what's growing in you, and blessed are you for believing it, and blessed are you for receiving it. And I love all that. I could dwell on that a little bit longer, but I'm going to go on because that brings me to the two things that are kind of archetypal about the story. The first archetypal thing is the power of the blessing. Yeah. The second thing, I don't know what else to call it, but it's a kind of an invitation. I would want to stir people up to the possibility of parenting. And I'm talking about beyond biological parenting. Okay, let's talk about the blessing first. Ron Rolheiser, in his book, incredible book called Sacred Fire, identifies three components to what he thinks is a biblical or an authentic blessing. And all of these components are visible. We're going to see them in Elizabeth. The first is this, that Elizabeth sees what's going on in Mary. Elizabeth spots, I see you. Let me read Rolheiser's quote here on defining a blessing. At a primal level, we see this need to be blessed by being seen. That's the key, to be seen, acted out daily on every playground on earth. A little child is playing, but constantly looking about to see if their mother or father is watching. Mommy, watch me. Daddy, look at me. Okay, we all get that. At another level, we see this acted out ritually when someone has an audience with a major dignitary, like a king or a queen. And some of us look at that and go, who would go to that big, say hi to the queen? In such an audience, few words are exchanged. That the idea is not so much that you have a conversation with the king or the queen or the pope or whoever, but that you're seen by them. There's a blessing imparted. You're not even aware of it, but it's what kind of mysteriously draws you to that thing, that they would see me. You can almost see crowds, or rock and roll star. Okay, they saw me, like that. There's a blessing imparted when this happens, and contemporary cynicism notwithstanding, he says, those who have such an audience have some feeling for what a blessing is. Blessing by seeing is one of the deep archetypal functions of all royalty, all parenting, all coaching and teaching. All who lead in any way carry that kind of potential, which means that what Elizabeth does is even more important relative to what a blessing is, because she doesn't just see Mary, she does, and she recognizes it, but what she actually does, and this is the bigger part of the blessing, she sees in Mary what Mary couldn't see in herself, and that's the blessing. Yeah. Right? When Elizabeth sees in Mary, I see it, you don't see it, you're scared of it, don't be scared of it, I can see it. Seeing it and seeing what's in that person is the blessing. Second ingredient, beyond seeing them, first part of the blessing, where it comes from the Father, talked a lot about that. This is the mother, the feminine energy,
Yeah.
is seeing them. The second is to delight in them. I told a story a whole bunch of times. It's one of my favorite dad stories. I was a sophomore in high school. Every once in a while, my dad would drive me to school. This is so vivid in my mind because we were stuck at a railroad crossing because the train was there, and we were just sitting there. And I'm going to be late for school, blah, blah, blah. And my dad is sitting next to me. And for some he was prompted, whatever, something kind of came over him. He looked over at me and he just said, "Dave, you make my heart glad." And guess what I did? You heard the story, so you know what I did.
Yeah.
I looked out the window away from him and pretended I didn't hear him and pretended I didn't care. But inside, I'm exploding.
Yeah.
By the way, there were so many. Okay, it was significant enough that I'm telling you that story now. I remember it really well, but it also helped me later on with kids, grandkids, your kids around our house, my own kids, young men and women at church that I want to say something to, and I might say, they don't care. I don't care. If I don't ever pretend that you don't see it, but if you see it, you say it. And if they act like they don't care, don't care.
Yeah.
Say it anyway. Say it. It matters that you see them, and you make my heart glad that you delight in them. So there's two pieces of the blessing archetypally. Third, that Rolheiser identifies is, and I love this part too, third ingredient of a blessing is when you give away some part of your life juice, your energy, your resources of some kind. And the reason you give them some of your life is so that they can have more.
Yeah.
Maybe than you life. More resourced emotionally, financially, whatever it is that you've got to give, you give some part of your life. That's a third part of the blessing. And giving part of your life away might sound a little weird to some, but I honestly think on this, it really is. I need to not preach it too much. Just say it and let you people just kind of, it is what the old do for the young.
Yeah.
It's what they're supposed to do. Not all do. It's what parents do for children. It's what good teachers do for students. It's what good coaches do for players. It's what good pastors do for parishioners. It's what good leaders do for the next. Who's ever next need to be seen, delighted in. They need to, and I need to give some of my life to them so they can have more, so they can go further. It's what Elizabeth is doing for Mary. It's huge. It's huge. This is what I mean by archetypal. It's like, holy moly. And I'm so delighted again that I found this gender different, not male. It's feminine. It's not limited to that masculine thing. Indeed, part of the story archetypally was that the life in Mary, think about this, ultimately, okay, the life in Mary literally was Jesus, okay?
Right.
The life in Mary, or Elizabeth, literally was John the Baptist. And Jesus once said of John the Baptist, no one greater, blah, 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 than him. But ultimately, in terms of like, just like what we think of these people, the life in Mary was going to one day be greater than the life in Elizabeth, okay? And John, by the way, knew it too, John the Baptist. Remember when he said at one point he realized, okay, he must increase, I must decrease. This is what the older does for the younger. This is what parents do for their children. This is the way, huge. It's what, okay. So Elizabeth was doing that. It's what pastors who after 38 years leave. You need to create space for the next. It's what corporate executives who have learned to let go don't always do. But it's the ability to create space, to let go, to relinquish. You give away a part of your life so they can have more. Archetypal truth. I think actually, it becomes clearer, like what I'm talking about, when we don't see it. You, it's like I
Sure.
understand it because I think we're more familiar with it when it doesn't happen. Corporately, politically, even in a church succession thing like that we just went through with me leaving, when there was a refusal to create space for the next, a refusal in the corporate level. I mean, it's this kind of, you're always pushing people down. You're making sure you never lose your power. In the work I've done with guys in particular, it's this guy who just constantly has to win, woman to same kind of thing. So it's the ability to release power, release control. It's what the older to do for the young. It's what one generation is supposed to do for the next. This is cool. Just yesterday, it was after the Vikings game. Was it yesterday or the day before? The day before. And Justin Jefferson, this incredible new wide receiver for the Vikings, who's I think he's, he's all pro as a rookie. Probably going to might be the rookie of the year, but all pro as a rookie. Just an incredible player. Went up to Drew Brees, the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And not everybody knows, but Drew Brees is this old Hall of Fame, first round Hall of Famer, amazing guy. Beat the bejeebers out of the Vikings 52 to something that day. But Jefferson goes up to Drew Brees, and players do this all the time. He wants his jersey, and Drew Brees signs it. And here's what he wrote: "You are the next generation of great ones." You didn't have to do that. He could just say, "Drew, I mean, you are the next." He called him out. He saw him. He blessed him. I don't know if Drew Brees knows what that means. I think he does, actually. I think he does. I think he knew what he was doing. That's incredible. Yeah, that it's bigger than we know.
Yeah.
You are the next generation of great ones. He wasn't making it up. This is not, let me say something nice. No, you have to actually see it.
Yeah.
But when he did, he said it. And I just think it matters more than we know. And it's fun to use a Drew Brees like analogy because it happens more than we know.
Yeah.
And also we can feel it when it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway, I'm not going to leave. I'll leave Trump alone for a while. I cracked me up. Anyway.
I know.
Okay. The second thing is this possibility of parenting that this archetype speaks to. So the first is this power of the blessing. And what it's kind of an invitation. I would like to have people kind of have their imagination captivated, because it's like the possibility of being an Elizabeth that exists for you, for me. Again, I already told you this, but Elizabeth is not Mary's mother. And again, it's not that Mary's mother was a bad person, but Elizabeth was the first person. Mary made a beeline for her. She ran to her, and what Elizabeth, and the reason she ran to her, because I think instinctively, I mean, you have people you would run to, right?
Oh, totally.
Yes.
And if Mary's a teenager, she's pulling away from her parents at that time. So that's totally natural for her to find that affirmation from.
Yes, Mary was individuating. So we get all that psychology in here too. Yeah, and you even that, it's like, it's not like your mom's bad, but like, or your dad, but there are people that you go to and instinctively you know that they'll know. Why do you know that? Because they're just, the life of God is in them. That's how that's why Vicki Degner's office, when she was on staff at Open Door, there was a line of people outside her door every day.
When she walks in the building now, it's Vicki.
Yeah, because I'm going to you, because there's a knowing in you, because the life of God is in you. But Elizabeth was providing for Mary the kind of things that parents do for kids, the old do for the young, good teachers do for students. And again, when it's missing is when you notice it. Richard Rohr quote. Now this one is applying to men, but it applies to women too. Most men grow up, he says, women too, with an emptiness inside of them. Call it father hunger, call it male deprivation, call it lack of fathering, no matter. It's the same emptiness. They never got the blessing. They never got the yes from the father or the mother. When positive masculine energy, an energy that can be trusted and relied upon, is not shared from father to son, it creates a vacuum in the soul, and into that vacuum, demons rush.
Yeah.
Demons of self-doubt, fear, cynicism, anger, mistrust, rage, all sorts of stories about this in the Bible. I just remember when I was going through the life of David, and I don't have time to go through the whole thing, but maybe that's one of the bundles we'll pull together and do some of the David talks. But he did not have a good dad. And by a good dad, we don't know everything about Jesse, but we know this about Jesse. And archetypally, I mean, the Bible's full of this stuff. It's never by accident. Jesse didn't see David. When Samuel came, having got a word from the Lord that the next king is going to come from the house of Jesse, he went to Jesse's house. Jesse pulled out, got all of his sons, and there were, can't remember how many, 30, 40, a bunch. But he didn't have David come. He was the youngest. He was the runt of the litter. He was out watching the sheep. He didn't see him, didn't even cross his mind, Jesse's, that David might be the guy that God would use. So he didn't have a father who saw him. And I can tell you something about David with not knowing one thing about David. David needed a father who saw him. Because everybody does. Everybody does. And he didn't have that. But if you let the story go on, who saw him? Somebody saw him. And it was somebody pretty significant. And it wasn't Vicky Degner this time. It was Samuel, the prophet. Yeah. So Samuel goes, something's missing, and then Samuel, the prophet, says you. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Katie Beasley was speaking. Was it Zechariah? Whoever in the temple said, "You are." He called someone out. He called out. I think it was John, his own son. He did that same thing. He named them. But Samuel came and said, the reason David's a guy is man looks on the outward appearance, and you saw a runt, and God looks on the heart, but what that ultimately means relative to the archetype is that Samuel had spiritual eyes. Like Elizabeth had the life of God in her, which is why she could spot the life of God in you. I lost my earbud. Uh-oh. The life of God in Samuel was able to spot the life of God in David and spiritual eyes. Man, look, God looks on the heart, and I see your heart. So here's the word about that. And this comes in the context of, let's just make an assumption. Because when I read that Richard Rohr quote, into that vacuum demons rush, when I'm doing that talk, I go, okay, let's stop right there. A whole bunch of men in the room, maybe it's a men's retreat or something. I've done this often at that retreat, and they're half of them are crying. Yeah, because, and I go, you just spread that out over the culture and the cynicism, rage. I'm not putting everything on that, but into that vacuum, demons have rushed, and it's the havoc, the pain is kind of mind numbing. But David got a Samuel. And here's what David, he could have ignored it. He could have blown it off. He's just Samuel, who cares? Here's the word, whoever you are. We need to pay much closer attention to who our Samuels and to who our Elizabeths are. I'll tell you why. Because they are your mother and they are your father. And now that's especially true if you've got that father wound, that mother wound. You didn't have father or mother who saw you. Then you need to let it count. I remember preaching this and wondering, how do I get this inside of people, you just kind of pray even now that the Spirit of God would do that. That you would not only identify, wait a minute, I've carried this thing of bitterness toward my father because I didn't get it and he didn't see me, and my mother because I did it, but you have an Elizabeth and you never saw her, and you need to name them, you need to identify them.
Yeah.
And I even think you need to tell them, like, thanks, or they are your father and mother. And the second word, it wasn't second, or 1 Corinthians 4, that Paul has this lament. And here's what he says: we have many teachers, but we have not many fathers. Now I'm going to contextualize that. First of all, for the church, when I left Open Door, one of the reasons I want to work with pastors as much as I can, for as long as I can, is that I think we already have many teachers. The last thing I think the church needs are more CEO pastors. I'm not kidding. And I'm not even saying that's evil or bad, but it's not what we need. We have many teachers. We have not many fathers, like men who are willing to be a Samuel, women who are willing to be an Elizabeth, who recognize that capacity. I've told this story before. 28 years ago, when I hit the wall, wasn't going to even come back to Open Door. The church was adolescent. Remember this? I don't have time to tell the whole story, but I felt like God said, you don't have to go back, but if you do, this church does not need a kid right out of seminary doing high fives. It needs a father. Would you be willing to put that jacket on? And I said, it's too big. And he said, you'll grow into it. We don't talk like that, but and I did grow into it. I did. I did. So I just end with two questions. One, who's your Elizabeth? Who's your Samuel? Identify them, name them, tell them. So it could take some time, some work. Maybe some know it right away. Second question, and this is it. Is it time to recognize that maybe God's calling you to be one?
Yeah.
To say, yeah, I will be a Samuel. I will be an Elizabeth. It doesn't fit. It's too big, but I'll put it on, and not in some like I'm the dad now, but in order to do that, you need to see the need for it. And I think it's enormous. I don't know if there's I like to overstate everything, but I just can't. There's so many things that this explains relative to trouble in the world and in marriages, that our sons who've never been fathered, and daughters who've never been fathered or mothered, and had, or then not found their Samuel or identified their Elizabeth. But is it time for some of you to recognize that there's a need for it, and then to actively and intentionally receive it? I was at a retreat with Kenty. This is just before COVID hit. This is how I remember it. A bunch of pastors, and I was talking about this father thing, and then telling my story about putting on the mantle of a father and whatever that means, and blah blah blah. And near the end, I got to this challenge of saying, "You have no idea." And we have many teachers. You guys are great. We don't have many fathers, but it's more about you saying yes to it than am I up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing I got most response to after, from men and women, because men and women heard it, was when you said, "Don't aw shucks it," because that's what I was about to say. If you're feeling this, this recognition that I could be an Elizabeth myself, or Samuel. When you see that kid, and you're not making something up, you're not just trying to, give them a pep talk. You really see the life of God in them. Don't shucks it. Don't it doesn't matter. They won't care. Go back to the railroad track with my dad. You make my heart glad. I'm looking out the window. I don't care. Yes, they do. Don't shucks it. Do it. It's like huge. I should have picked a word than huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even for me, I mean, I've been so emotional through this whole conversation, because it's bringing me back to different moments that people have mothered or fathered me. And I loved what you said about it not meaning that our parents aren't significant in that way. It is
Nope.
just a different way of parenting. And sometimes we do get that from our parents, like you did from your dad. You recalled that moment, and I definitely have too.
Yep.
But I feel I think the emotions are because I feel so grateful. I have grown up in a culture, primarily Open Door, and then the people around me outside of Open Door that I've never hurt for that.
Mm-hmm.
For that affirmation
Yeah.
of who I am and what I'm called to.
People have seen you.
Yeah, in some really significant ways.
What's weird for me is they see you because you're like the real deal. People saw me when I was younger because I would go, "Hello, I'm here," like that, and then
Yeah.
and then never counted.
No. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you don't have any doubt. Like there for sure is doubt living inside of me. There for sure is questions living inside me. I continue to need those people in my life.
Sure.
And sometimes they show up at the most unexpected ways. And I want to encourage people, if you're feeling this, like, I think I am called to be an Elizabeth. I think I am called to be a Samuel. It doesn't have to look like anything crazy. I'm remembering I started a new program this year, where I'm going to be certified as a spiritual director. And Bonnie drops me off this beautiful secret little package of highlighters and notebooks and a candle. And it can be something as simple as that. She's the best. If you want to learn how to do this, call Bonnie Johnson.
Yeah. I was going to say, she's such a bad person.
Yeah, right. There are simple ways to do this, to affirm things in people, to call out the life of God, to say yes and amen.
Yep.
To your friends, to the people generations younger than you, even to people older than you, that you can affirm what God is up to. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not, it can feel awkward. That's why I say don't shucks it. I think I've gotten used to it, but like I don't make stuff up. But like you're watching a worship set at church, or you're part of a worship set and you're noticing somebody and you just go, wow, God's on him. Just tell them. It's all. It's not flattery. Yeah. And they know they don't know. Somebody saw. That's the blessing. Yeah.
For me, as someone who does programming at a church, at our church, when people choose to share what has impacted them or affirming something that they saw me do kind of in front of a group, and usually it's like a note or an email later, so often those come at a time when I'm tired, doubting, worried that it's not working, or maybe I'm on the wrong path. So as someone who receives stuff like that every now and then, that's like that encouragement, like listen to those prompts, however silly or weird they feel, because I promise on the other end, they don't feel insignificant or weird.
Nope.
So,
well, to use one of the phrases we use here, when somebody gives you something like that and they tell you they saw you when you couldn't see. You.
Yeah.
So I love that phrase that I made up, but it was, but I did. But it was like Elizabeth said to Mary, "What we need to hear, don't wonder anymore. If this is a good thing, quit that. Don't wonder anymore. If it's a God thing, blessed are you, and blessed is the fruit of what's growing in you." See, we think I have nothing in common with Mary. Then you're not a Christian. Yeah, you do. Whatever it is that God is growing in you is that thing.
Right.
And blessed is the fruit of that good thing in you.
Yes. Yeah. Whether
And
it's a nonprofit you're running,
yeah,
I don't know, working in
Yep.
an office, being a police officer, it's just not
Yep.
isolated to people in vocational ministry. Although that's what you and I talk about. This
Yeah.
is across all the spectrums of careers and callings.
And if it ain't, this is not true.
Yeah.
Because this is, remember we talk about that? All
Yeah.
truth is, it's true everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I keep talking about this and crying about it for days
I
and
know.
hours.
Well, it's why I wanted to do Elizabeth.
Yeah.
We didn't want to let this one go. It's weird because I think we told people at the beginning this Advent was kind of an experiment. And I do have ideas about writing a book out of this, an Advent book, and maybe more than one, but that maybe it doesn't matter. But Elizabeth could be easily one of the chapters. But do you see what I meant too? That it's way bigger than just Advent. Like this is like, yeah.
So maybe in the new year, find yourself a spiritual director, a mentor, or a counselor. Right? That's what I think this story makes me want to do. I need to go call my counselor and set up an appointment.
Yeah. And maybe, I absolutely think that. And then too, I remember recognize, because I did have a good thing with my dad, so it wasn't coming out of a big father wound.
Mm-hmm.
But identifying, it was just a healthy thing to identify those people who, wow, they saw me. Yeah. And it was part of, actually, I remember I was a junior in college. We were married, which is bizarre. Don't do that. Don't get married when you're still in college. But I had gotten asked to go speak at my dad's church at their high school retreat. And that doesn't sound like a big thing, but they had like 120 kids in their high school retreat. That was a big thing to me. Never preached before. And I had to do 6 talks. And at the end of the weekend, God did stuff. And one of the elders in my dad's church came up to me, and it wasn't flattery. He just said, "Thank you." But he says, "When you talk, I remember what you say." I was 25. I mean, I don't know. I was 20. I remember what you say. And I've never forgot that. I mean, that guided me. You are a teacher.
Yeah.
Because I remember what you say. I think that's the gift.
Yeah. Was it because you did the same 6 talks?
All 3, all 6 were the same talk.
Yeah.
And he said, "Would you please, stretch it out a little bit more?" Because after 6, I remember.
I couldn't let that one go.
No, that was good. That's really good. That was good. That made me feel bad.
It was supposed to.
You did. It ruined this whole talk for me.
I'm glad I have so much power.
Anyway.
Well, speaking of power, I'm going to stop recording, but this was wonderful, and I hope that it stirs up a lot in the people that listen. So send us a little note if you'd like to, or leave us a comment. We do love to hear from you. Who knows what we're doing next, but it does matter.
It does matter to hear.
We read them, we send them back and forth. So Merry Christmas Tide. Are we in Christmas Tide yet?
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought it was Easter tide. Is there Christmas tide too?
Yeah, there's Christmas tide.
That's what we're in.
Dave's gonna go Google some things.
Nope.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.